Hey folks, okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you through a 4-part video presentation, and it's going to be composed of the first part, which is going to be about the original mortgage loan documentation, mainly just the promissory note and the security agreement. And then the second part is going to be about securitization, and then we're going to talk about MERS in the third part, and then we're going to talk about foreclosure procedure and the documentation related to foreclosure procedure in part 4. Okay, so for this first part, let's talk about the original closing documents that a homeowner signs. The two most important ones, the traditional contracts, are the promissory note, okay, promissory note, and a security agreement that secures the property to the repayment on the note, which is called a deed of trust here in California, and it's called a mortgage in many other states. So let me just talk just for a minute about the difference between a mortgage and a deed of trust. Okay, they're both security agreements. A mortgage is a two-party document where you have a mortgagor, who's the borrower, and a mortgagee, who's the lender, or if that loan is sold to somebody else, the new mortgagee is an assignee, okay? But mortgagor and mortgagee. Now, in deed of trust states, which are most of the western states, you have a three-party contract where you have the trustor, who's the borrower, you have the beneficiary, who's the lender or the assignee, and then you have a third-party trustee who holds the title on behalf of either the lender, if they on behalf of the borrower if they repay the loan, or on behalf of the lender, the beneficiary, if they don't repay the loan. So three-party arrangement, and that's called a deed of trust. Alright, so when I refer to a deed of trust, I typically also mean a mortgage, or when I refer to a mortgage, typically also refer to a deed of trust. Now, it's really common in these circles for people to just refer to the security agreement as a mortgage. Whether they mean mortgage or whether they mean deed of trust, it's pretty much interchangeable for the most part. Okay, so let's talk for a second about the security agreement, the deed of trust in this case, first. And okay, so what we have here is we have one of these, a very typical industry deed of trust from the 2000s, and it's a MERS related deed of trust, and so it's got a MERS MIN number on it, okay, MERS tracking number, and it has it lists the borrower, and it lists the name of the lender, and it lists MERS as a third party beneficiary. Now, it's a little bit tricky, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the MERS video, but they have MERS listed as the beneficiary in this. And this basically just says if you don't repay the loan, then this ties the property to that and will come repo the house. Okay, now the other document is the note, the promissory note. Okay, so this one here is 8.5 by 11. It's a copy. It's been shrunk, but the original promissory notes are 8.5 by 14 in size. All right. Now, this doesn't make any reference to MERS in it, and it lists the lender as, I believe in this case, Countrywide Home Loans, and it says what the terms are and the amount due and all that, and it may come with an adjustable rate rider, right, which refers to an amortization schedule and all of that. But what's important about these notes is that these are negotiable instruments. So just like a check is a negotiable instrument, these are governed under the Uniform Commercial Code, which has been adopted in, I believe, all the states, and maybe slightly changed, but for the most part it is the Uniform Commercial Code is pretty much the same in all states for the most part, and it's Article 3 that governs it. Article 4 governs checks. Article 3 governs these kinds of negotiable instruments, and they are transferred or assigned by physical possession and endorsement, just like a check. So it has a pay to in the text there in the front, and it can be endorsed on the back page, kind of like a check. And this is a blown up version of it here, but there's an endorsement. This one you're looking at there is called a blank endorsement. It says pay to the order of, and then there's just a blank line there. Okay, that's like when I write you a check and I leave the payee line blank. That means whoever is going to cash the check just fills in their name and cashes it. What matters is that it's signed, that it's endorsed. Same thing here. Okay, so you can also endorse a check or a promissory note with what's called a special endorsement. And that means that the person who is going to be the holder, the bearer, the person who's going to cash it or have rights to it, is going to be listed with their names specifically listed in there. So it's a pay to the order of J.P. Morgan or whatever. This one here is paid to the order of blank. Very common that promissory notes get transferred that way. And what that means is, if it's endorsed in blank, that means it becomes what they call bearer paper, and whoever's holding it has the right to make a claim to it. All right? And so that's the promissory note. Now, the promissory note was never typically recorded in the county recorder's office. Okay, it's transferred in the secondary mortgage market, and it's done so privately. And what is recorded in the county recorder's office is the corresponding security agreement, the deed of trust or mortgage. All right. Now, when a mortgage loan gets assigned in the secondary mortgage market, then with the assignment of the note, there typically should be, in good faith, there should be an assignment of the security agreement too. So what you would see in the county recorder's office is you'd see the original deed of trust, and then you'd see an assignment of deed of trust to whoever bought the note. Okay, we're not seeing that with these securitized mortgages, and we're going to go into that more later. But that's the basics of the original loan documentation that we really are dealing with here. The original note and the security agreement. And now let's go into securitization.